Right, y'all, it's Michelle here. I changed my intro a little bit. Welcome to another video. It's Wednesday morning. It's wet, it's horrible, it's grim, and I'm going to get straight into this one. But I have absolutely no idea where to start with this. But I'm going to start where I finished in my last video on the bizarre coincidences in the Summer Wells case. If you didn't watch that video, it might be worth you watching that one first. I'll leave it in the cards because you'll never understand where I'm going in this video if you don't have the basic background. In short, there are several creators now trying to show links between different people in Hawkins County and the corruption in light of Brandon Lewis Lawson, Sheriff Ronnie Lawson's son, getting a bizarrely lenient jail term. It may be that he only has to serve 30% of a year, which is about 109 days, for 4 counts of aggravated battery against minors, against little girls. It's bizarre. But it's not surprising because Hawkins County is corrupt to the core. It's corrupt through and through. The rotten apples in that barrel have corrupted the whole lot of them. It's not the people. It's not the people who just go about and live their lives. It's the people in charge. It's the rich people. And one such rich person is someone called Roger Stewart, who appears to own a lot of land, a lot of properties, buys and sells properties, has various companies, seems to own various churches. Ziggy's been talking about him for the last few days. And I verified a little bit of what Ziggy has been talking about in my video the other day. So this Roger Stewart dude, he has a son called Kevin Stewart. He also has a wife called Rachel Gorley. Now we're going to encounter several Rachels, so let's be very clear that we're talking about different people. Right, so we've got Roger's wife, or it could be Kevin's wife because she's so much younger than him. But then again, younger women marry older men when they've got money. But there's this Rachel Vanessa Gorley. Now, when Ziggy mentioned Roger's wife, or possibly Kevin's wife, or whoever's wife, it doesn't matter whose wife she is, Rachel Vanessa Gorley, it struck me that there are a family of Gorleys living on Ben Hill Road, 178 Ben Hill Road to be precise. But I can't find any links between Rachel Vanessa Gorley and the Gorleys living on Ben Hill Road. So is that a dead end? Is that just a bizarre coincidence? Yes, maybe. But there's some more bizarre coincidences when we consider the other Rachels and important people, in inverted commas, in Rogersville. Okay, so we've got 2 Rachel Gullies. Not Gorley, Gully. I made a mistake in a video last week when I talked about someone called R. Gully. I might as well just use her name Rachel, right? I thought there was just one Rachel Gully. So a Rachel Gully who lived with or associated with, shared addresses with, a big pedo called John Allen Biggins, who was taken down by the feds because he tried to set up a liaison with a 4-year-old child. This was a sting operation. There was no real 4-year-old child. The point was, Biggins, the big pedo, he thought there was a 4-year-old child. So there's a Rachel Gully there. And I found a Rachel Clontz Gully on Brandon Lawson's friends on his Facebook profile. And I just assumed they were the same person, but they're not. And Cam from Crackin Cases, in one of his videos recently, made that clear. So I stand corrected. There are 2 Rachel Gullies. This is why it gets so confusing. So we've got one Rachel Gorley, who may or may not be associated with the people who live on Ben Hill Road. And we've got 2 Rachel Gullies. One who's associated with big pedo John Allen Biggins, and another who's a friend of Brandon Lawson. Now, this friend, Rachel Clontz Gully, she's got, it appears to be, family members in high places. Now, this research was done by some members of my Facebook group who've taken up the challenge of finding as much as is possible to find about all of these different connections. So, it appears that Rachel Clontz Gully's father is Larry Clontz, who happens to be a Hawkins County Commissioner. Now, there's been an election this year, so whether he's still a commissioner doesn't matter really. He may or may not still be a commissioner, but the point is he was a commissioner, so an important person in Hawkins County. All of these people are big fishes in a very small pond, you know what I mean. It's time someone came up and just netted them all. But then we've got someone called Roy Clontz. Now, is this Larry Clontz's brother, dad? I'm not sure. But Roy Clontz, now who is Roy Clontz? Now, if we go back in time and we look at who used to live on Ben Hill Road, you can go to sites where all the old people, the people who used to live there, are still listed. So what you see here is 110 Ben Hill Road, and it was even before the two lots, 110 and 120 Ben Hill Road, were made into one property. Originally, 110 Ben Hill Road was 10.94 acres, and then there was a little small property that was 120 Ben Hill Road. So the original 110 Ben Hill Road is now a shed with the basement. And this is when Karen and William Gord lived there, and that's Karen Gord's dad. They lived there for a while. So Karen and William had both 110 and 120. And then we've got a 124, which doesn't exist anymore. We've got a 125, which was the Smiths. So that's Polly Bernard's family. We've got 145, which still exists. We've got 165, which still exists. There you can see Fred Hill is there. That's Fred Hill's dad, who's recently died. That's Fred Hill's mum. And there's Fred Jr. Hill. 167. So owned by the same people. And then we've got 178. The Goalies live there now, but it used to be owned by the Knights. Then we've got 200, which is some more Smiths, relatives of Polly. We've got 203, don't think that exists now. We've got 205, don't think that exists now. Maybe it does, I'm not sure. Anyway, let's keep going. We've got a Lawson here. Don't know if that's related to Ronnie Lawson. It's just interesting, but there's tons of Lawsons. But I'm getting to the point. Let's go down. Here, 249 Ben Hill Road, Roy Clontz. So is Roy Clontz Larry Clontz's dad, or is Roy Clontz Larry Clontz's brother? I don't know. It's just a bizarre coincidence that Roy Clontz used to own property on Ben Hill Road. Could this get any more bizarre? Now, I'm sure that this property buying and selling could be perfectly legal. It could be for tax reasons, or it could be for dodgy reasons to launder money or something else. It's a huge web. It's a huge web of corruption. But is the corruption and the connections that appear to be in existence, are they just coincidences in relation to who lives or lived on Ben Hill Road? And is it just a complete coincidence that this keeps leading back to Ben Hill Road? And is there in any way, shape or form the possibility that land or something has to do with the disappearance of Summer Wells? But we do know that this Roger Stewart dude considers himself the most powerful person in Hawkins County. As I said, big fish in a small pond. It's time someone drained that pond. Just netted all the fish, drained that pond, and started afresh. But someone in my Facebook group found this. Now, this is from 2013, and this is Times News Online. And I want to play you a bit of this. It's a grievance hearing between a cop who was fired because of Roger Stewart. It's only 7 minutes. Let's play it. It's very bad audio, but I've got the CCs on, so hopefully that will help.
Let me start out by setting the groundwork here a little bit. As most of you, you're all aware, Mr. Hammonds was a Rogersville police officer and was dismissed by action of the chief and the mayor as they are authorized to do so. Tennessee is an at-will employment state, and anyone can be dismissed for any reason or not. It doesn't take a reason. But our personnel...
You don't need a reason to fire someone, okay? All right, don't need a reason to fire someone. Anyway, Mr. Hammonds, police officer, was fired. Let's listen to what Mr. Hammonds has to say for himself. Why was he fired? Does he know?
Policy provides that we have a grievance policy. And so if Mr. Hammonds has something here tonight that bears directly on his dismissal as a police officer, I'm not going to allow ad hominem attacks on people personally. But if he has something directly that bears on his dismissal and wants the board of mayor and aldermen to hear it, and you are, of course, entitled to hear it and issue your opinion on the matter. So I'll allow Mr. Hammonds to speak if he wants to do so.
On July the 11th, 2013, upon my arrival for work as a Rogersville police officer, I was called to Mr. Lyons' office by Police Chief Doug Nelson and told I was terminated. I was given a termination notice that stated as a reason for firing was due cause. When asked what that meant, Chief Nelson stated Roger wouldn't quit calling. He was referring, of course, to Roger Stewart. At no point was I allowed to express my side of things or a defense of my job. Honestly, did not know why I was being fired, but have since realized I was because of Roger Stewart holds a personal grudge against me and has nothing to do with my job performance. At the conclusion of this meeting, Chief Nelson then demanded my service weapon. I have been fired because of false allegations involving Roger Stewart's wife, which had nothing to do with my employment. Mr. Stewart and his cronies have caused damage to my career without benefit of a fair investigation. I would put my credibility in good standing next to Roger Stewart's without hesitation. Perhaps that's why I was denied an opportunity to tell my side, the honest side, in short, the truth. I realize that Mr. Lyons and Chief Nelson conduct personal business with each other. I also realize that Roger Stewart does business with Mr. Lyons, Doug Nelson, and William Phillips through his work at Citizens Bank.
So they're all connected, right? The bosses at Rogersville Police Department and Roger Stewart, they're all connected. They're all buddies. It's the old boys club. And anybody who they've got a grievance against, anybody they don't like, for whatever reason, they can just fire. And Tennessee plays into this because they can just fire anybody at any time without a reason. So these guys, this old boys club, they're taking good advantage of it. So anybody they don't like, they just fire. So can you understand why people don't want to stand up against Ronnie Lawson and this ridiculously lenient sentence that Brandon Lawson's received? Do you understand why the judge that was brought in especially to try, I say try because it wasn't a trial, but oversee Brandon Lawson's case, acquiesced to a really lenient sentence? Because this judge wants to get on, right? Wants to get on with his career. They can hire and fire at will. These are just little people to these big fish, right? These big sharks are just nothing but minnows, really. Big fish, small pond. What you going to do when people like me are exposing you, Roger Stewart? What you going to do because your money isn't welcome here? Your money isn't relevant here. I'm 4,000 miles away. What you going to do, Roger Big Fish Stewart?
I further understand that Roger Stewart may have retained Mr. Phillips or his law firm to represent him in a vehicular homicide charge he now faces.
We'll get onto that vehicular homicide in a minute.
After my termination, Chief Nelson called me and asked to come by my residence. When he arrived, he told me it would look better on me if I would resign instead of being terminated. I refused. He then threatened to bring false charges against me if I exposed anything I knew on him. I was told that Mr. Phillips would assist in making good on this threat. Mayor Sells knows that I did not support him in his re-election bid in 2013. He cautioned me about ending up on the wrong side of the political fence when the election is over. I never campaigned against Mr. Sells or for his opponent during work hours. Mayor Sells has personal and political connections with Roger Stewart. That coupled with his
This is 2013, but the mayor has got connections with Roger Stewart, right?
personal dislike for me not supporting him during his re-election campaign contributed to my unjust termination for so-called due cause, whatever that means. I was fired for purely political reasons relating to both the city election of 2013 and the town's loyalty to Roger Stewart, which has cost me both my job and my right to appeal the appeal of the firing according to the town of Rogersville's personnel policy handbook. The Rogersville city government should not act as if it is somehow beholden to Roger Stewart. Instead, we are beholden to the tax-paying citizens of the town of Rogersville. I most respectfully request that the will of the citizens of the town of Rogersville, through you, their elected representatives, be carried out immediately, returning me to my job. Your constituents would strongly agree with this proposed action. Thank you, and may God bless.
Well, they're not going to stand up against Roger Stewart, are they? Just a bunch of yes men. Anyhow, what is this vehicular homicide thing that they talked about? Well, this is him. This is Roger Stewart. This is from 2015. Rogersville businessman remains free on homicide conviction appeal. So what happened in this case? State of Tennessee versus Roger Dale Stewart. The defendant, Roger Dale Stewart, was convicted of 1 count of criminally negligent homicide, a Class E felony. Yes, of course it was pled down. And 2 counts of reckless endangerment. Why? Because he was driving on the wrong side of the road. On appeal, he argues that the evidence was insufficient to sustain his convictions, that the trial court erred when it refused to provide a requested jury instruction, that his conviction violated the principles of double jeopardy and the due process clause, and that the trial court erred by imposing a 2-year sentence to be served in confinement. Following our review, we affirm the judgment of the trial court. So he did do some time for driving the wrong way down a road. The defendant could have continued westbound and reached a crossover road several hundred yards further down Highway 11. The defendant could have used this crossover road and then travelled eastbound to R&R Auto Sales. At the hospital, the defendant told Sergeant Alley that he was attempting to cross over the highway to enter the parking lot of R&R Auto Sales instead of just going a few hundred yards. It was something he'd done 1,000 times before, and nothing like this had ever happened. What, somebody was travelling on the road, just driving along on the right side of the road, and someone on the wrong side of the road crashed into them and killed them. Just thinks he can do what he wants. This dude is incredible. But what does any of this have to do with Summer Wells? At the very least, I believe it shows that this case is compromised. This case has not been properly investigated because of the people involved, or at the very least, the fears that there are people involved connected with law enforcement, corrections, etc., etc. You only have to look at the people who live in the vicinity of Summer Wells. But before I sign off, do you want one more bizarre coincidence? Well, here it is. This is from Cam and Ali from Crackin Cases. Do you remember a few weeks ago when there was a little flurry of interest that Don Wells' Facebook, the profile picture had changed to this dude here? This dude. Right, and this is Don Wells' genuine Facebook. Now, he is obviously not looking at his Facebook because he's in jail. So people speculated, who's this dude? Well, Cam and Ali have found out who this dude is. Are you ready for the coincidence? Are you ready for it? It's someone called Joseph Gully. Now, he's from Morristown, which is near Knoxville. It's not in Rogersville, but it's an identical picture. Now, the coincidence is the surname, Gully. We've got Zach Gully, the RSO. We've got 2 Rachel Gullys, one of them connected to Big Pedo John Allen Biggins, the other one connected to Brandon Lawson, whose dad possibly is a Hawkins County Commissioner. Now, there's nothing in a surname except for all of these previous coincidences. So why is Joseph Gully having access to Don Wells' Facebook? I can't work out why Joseph Gully would have access to Don Wells' Facebook. Is it some kind of joke? Did he work out Don's password and was able to hack it? Or has somebody connected to Don, Candice, Tim Mullins, somebody else? Have they changed this to Joseph Gully's profile picture to tell us something? I don't know. It's pretty obscure because nobody knew who this dude was. I don't know. It's very strange. It's just another bizarre thing that's happened in this case. Let me know what you think to all of this in the comments below. I've been Michelle. Hope you're well. I'll see you in the next video. It's goodbye from Miss Tillington and Miss Cassie Springer. Bye, guys.